Lauren had photographed hundreds of events in her 5 years as a professional photographer, but the Castellano Foundation Gala was in a league of its own. The venue was a historic mansion on the outskirts of the city, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers, and the kind of old money elegance that whispered rather than shouted. The guest list read like a who's who of the city's elite, business magnates, politicians, celebrities, and the kind of people whose names appeared in financial newspapers rather than gossip columns. Lauren moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, her camera capturing candid moments between champagne toasts and carefully choreographed small talk. She'd learned long ago that the best event photographers were ghosts, present enough to get the shots but invisible enough that guests forgot they were being observed. It was nearly 10 p.m., 3 hours into the 6-hour event, and Lauren's feet were killing her despite the comfortable flats she always wore to these things. She'd been standing, walking, crouching for perfect angles since the first guests arrived. But the shots were good. Great even. Moments of genuine laughter, elegant compositions of the venue's architecture, perfectly timed captures of the foundation's director making his speech. This job would look excellent in her portfolio. Might even lead to more high-end bookings if the clients were happy with the results. Lauren was adjusting her camera settings near the bar when she felt someone move too close behind her. Not accidental proximity in a crowded space, deliberate invasion of her personal bubble. She turned to find a man in his 50s, expensive suit slightly rumpled, tie loosened, holding a tumbler of what was clearly not his first drink of the evening. "Hey there, pretty photographer," he slurred, his breath heavy with whiskey. "How about you take some pictures of me? I'm very photogenic." Lauren forced a professional smile, the one she'd perfected for dealing with drunk guests who didn't understand boundaries. "I'm actually hired to capture candid moments of the whole event, sir. But I'm sure some of the shots I've taken tonight include you." "That's not what I meant." He moved closer, and Lauren took a step back, finding herself pressed against the bar with nowhere to go. "I want private shots. Personal. Maybe you could come back to my hotel room later and we could do a private session." Warning bells clanged in Lauren's head. She'd dealt with inappropriate guests before. It was an unfortunate occupational hazard of working events where alcohol flowed freely. But this man's tone and proximity felt more aggressive than the usual awkward flirtation. "I'm not that kind of photographer," Lauren said firmly, trying to step around him. "Please excuse me. I need to get back to work." His hand shot out, gripping her upper arm hard enough to hurt. "Don't be like that. I'm trying to be nice here. Give you some extra business." "You should be grateful." Lauren's heart hammered against her ribs. The bar area was partially secluded from the main event space, tucked into an alcove where they were blocked from view by decorative columns. No one could see what was happening. No one knew she needed help. "Let go of me," she said, keeping her voice low but firm. "Now." "Or what?" The man's smile was ugly, predatory. "You'll make a scene? Ruin this nice party?" "I don't think so." "I know the Castellanos. They wouldn't appreciate their photographer causing drama." He was right, and they both knew it. Event photographers who made scenes, who caused problems with guests, even guests who were completely in the wrong, didn't get hired again. Word spread fast in the events industry. One complaint from a powerful guest could tank her reputation. But Lauren also knew that giving in, playing along, trying to de-escalate by being compliant, that was dangerous in a different way. This man wasn't going to stop with inappropriate comments. He was already escalating, his grip on her arm tightening, his body pressing closer. "I said let go." Lauren's voice was louder now. Damn the consequences. She'd rather lose future bookings than let this situation go any further. "Hey." A new voice cut through the tension, male, with an edge of authority that made the drunk man actually pause. "The lady asked you to let go." Lauren looked past her aggressor to see a man she didn't recognize from the evening shots. Tall, impeccably dressed in a midnight blue suit that was clearly bespoke, with dark hair and features that were striking even in the dim lighting of the bar alcove. He stood with the kind of relaxed confidence that suggested he was entirely comfortable intervening in situations like this. "This doesn't concern you," the drunk man growled, but his grip on Lauren's arm loosened slightly. "Actually, it does." The stranger's voice remained calm, almost pleasant, but there was steel underneath. You're harassing a member of the event staff. That concerns anyone who values basic human decency. Who the hell are you two? Someone who's giving you an opportunity to walk away before this becomes a problem you can't solve with money or connections. The stranger moved closer, and despite not doing anything overtly threatening, his presence somehow filled the space. So let go of her. Now. And we'll pretend this conversation never happened. The drunk man's face flushed with anger and alcohol, but something in the stranger's demeanor made him hesitate. After a tense moment, he released Lauren's arm and stepped back, muttering something about uptight women and no sense of humor. I think you should leave, the stranger said quietly. Before security needs to escort you out. That would be embarrassing for everyone, don't you think? The drunk man shot Lauren a look that promised consequences if she caused trouble, then stumbled away toward the main ballroom. The moment he was gone, Lauren felt her legs go weak with relief and residual adrenaline. Are you all right? The stranger's voice had softened, the steel replaced by genuine concern. Did he hurt you? I'm fine, Lauren said automatically, then realized her arm was throbbing where the man had grabbed it. Or I will be. Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. You don't need to thank me. He was already stepping back, creating respectful distance. Just make sure you report him to the event organizers. Men like that need consequences, or they'll keep doing it to other women. I will. Lauren looked at him properly for the first time, trying to place his face. She'd photographed hundreds of guests tonight, but she didn't remember seeing him. I am Lauren, by the way. The photographer. Obviously. She gestured to her camera with a slightly shaky laugh. The stranger's mouth curved in a small smile that transformed his entire face from intimidating to approachable. I know, your work is excellent. I've been watching your compositions all evening. It should have sounded creepy, but somehow it didn't. There was respect in his voice, professional appreciation rather than anything inappropriate. Thank you, Lauren said, feeling heat creep up her neck at the compliment. I didn't catch your name? Sebastian. He glanced toward the ballroom, and Lauren got the sense he was about to leave. I should let you get back to work. Are you sure you're okay? Yes, really. Thanks to you. Lauren wanted to keep him talking, wanted to understand who this man was who'd intervened so effortlessly and was now preparing to disappear into the crowd. Can I buy you a drink? As a thank you? Or, that's not necessary. Sebastian's voice was kind but final. Just take care of yourself. And report what happened. You deserve to work without being harassed. He was moving away before Lauren could respond, his tall frame disappearing into the crowd with practiced ease. She stood there for a moment, staring after him, trying to process what had just happened. A stranger had protected her, had intervened when no one else had noticed or cared, had done it without expectation of reward or recognition. And then he'd vanished before she could even properly thank him. Lauren looked down at her camera, an idea forming. She scrolled through the evening shots, looking for any photos that might include the mysterious Sebastian. There had to be something. She'd photographed hundreds of guests tonight. But as she scanned through image after image, she realized something strange. Sebastian wasn't in any of them. Not in the crowd shots, not in the candids, not in the architectural compositions where guests naturally appeared in the background. It was like he'd somehow avoided her lens all evening despite being at the same event. Or like he'd deliberately stayed out of frame. The thought sent a chill down Lauren's spine. Who was skilled enough at avoiding cameras to remain completely unphotographed at an event where she'd taken over 800 shots? Who moved through a crowded gala with such precision that they never accidentally appeared in the background of someone else's moment? Lauren rubbed her arm where bruises were already forming and made her way back to the ballroom. She needed to report the incident to the event coordinator, needed to finish her job, needed to pack up her equipment and go home. But she couldn't stop thinking about Sebastian. About the way he'd intervened with such quiet authority. About how he'd known her name and profession without introduction. About how he'd vanished completely, leaving no trace except the memory of his presence and a feeling that she'd just encountered someone far more complicated than a simple Good Samaritan. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of obligation and exhaustion. Lauren reported the drunk man to the event coordinator, who was appropriately horrified and promised consequences. She finished capturing the final hours of the gala, packed her equipment, and accepted her payment from the grateful foundation director. But the entire time, her eyes kept scanning the crowd, looking for a tall figure in a midnight blue suit. Looking for the man who'd protected her and then disappeared. She never saw him again that night. It wasn't until she was home, uploading the evening's photos to her computer for editing, that Lauren noticed something odd. In the very last shot she'd taken before leaving, a wide angle of the ballroom capturing the final guests saying their goodbyes, there was a figure partially obscured by a column. Dark hair, midnight blue suit, watching the crowd with an expression of careful attention. Sebastian. He'd been there the whole time, watching, making sure she was safe. And he'd managed to avoid every single one of her shots except this one, a final image where he'd either made a mistake or deliberately allowed himself to be captured. Lauren zoomed in on the figure, trying to see his face more clearly. But the angle was wrong, the column blocking too much. All she could make out was his silhouette and the sense of coiled alertness in his posture. Who was Sebastian? And why did Lauren have the distinct feeling that their encounter wasn't as random as it had seemed? She saved the image separately, marking it as personal rather than client work. Then she stared at it for a long time, trying to understand the man who'd protected her and vanished, leaving only questions in his wake. 3 days after the gala, Lauren was editing photos in her small home studio when her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Spam calls were constant and annoying, but something made her pick up. Lauren Mitchell? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Speaking. My name is Diana. I work for a private client who was very impressed with your work at the Castellano Foundation Gala. He'd like to hire you for an upcoming event and discuss potential ongoing work. Would you be available for a meeting? Lauren's heart jumped. Private client, ongoing work? That could mean steady income instead of the feast or famine cycle of freelance photography. Yes, absolutely. When and where? Diana gave her an address in the financial district, one of those buildings with names, like prestige and exclusivity rather than numbers. The meeting was set for the next afternoon. Lauren spent the rest of the day trying not to hope too much. High-end clients could be particular, demanding, sometimes impossible to please. But if this worked out, if she could land a contract with someone who wanted regular event coverage, it could change everything about her precarious financial situation. The next afternoon, Lauren arrived at the building 15 minutes early, dressed in her professional meeting outfit, black slacks, cream blouse, blazer that made her look more established than she felt. The lobby was all marble and glass, the kind of place where even the air felt expensive. A receptionist directed her to the 10th floor, where Diana, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and immaculate taste, greeted her with a warm smile. Lauren, thank you for coming. Mr. Moretti is looking forward to meeting you. Moretti. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but Lauren couldn't place it. Diana led her down a hallway to an office at the end, knocked once, then opened the door. Lauren Mitchell is here, she announced. Thank you, Diana. That voice. Low, controlled, unmistakable. Lauren stepped into the office and froze. Sebastian sat behind an enormous desk, looking exactly as he had at the gala, except for the suit color. Charcoal gray today instead of midnight blue. He stood as she entered, and something in his expression suggested he'd been expecting her reaction. You, Lauren said, unable to form a more coherent response. Me. Sebastian's mouth curved in that small smile she remembered. Please, sit down. I promise this isn't as strange as it seems. Really? Because from where I'm standing, the man who rescued me at an event and then disappeared has apparently tracked me down and invited me to a mysterious meeting in his very impressive office. Lauren heard the edge in her own voice, part confusion, part suspicion, part something else she didn't want to examine. That seems pretty strange to me. Fair point. Sebastian gestured to the chairs across from his desk. Will you at least hear me out before you decide I'm a stalker? Lauren hesitated, then sat. She'd come here for a job opportunity, and despite the bizarre circumstances, she was curious about what Sebastian wanted. And maybe, if she was being honest with herself, she'd been hoping to see him again. "I'm listening," she said. Sebastian settled back into his chair, his posture relaxed, but somehow still commanding. "First, I want to apologize for not being more forthcoming at the gala. I had reasons for maintaining distance that had nothing to do with you and everything to do with the event itself." "What kind of reasons?" "I was there in a professional capacity, providing security for a client who was attending. My job requires discretion, which means staying out of photographs and avoiding unnecessary attention." His dark eyes held hers steadily. "But when I saw what was happening with you and that guest, I couldn't not intervene. Even if it meant breaking my own protocols. Security. That made sense, actually. The way he'd assessed the situation, the authority in his voice, the way he'd positioned himself to block the drunk man without appearing aggressive, those were professional skills, not just gentlemanly instincts." "So you work in private security," Lauren said slowly. "And you were at the gala protecting someone?" "Yes, though I'd appreciate if that information stayed between us. As I said, discretion is important in my line of work, and now you want to hire me?" "For what?" Sebastian leaned forward slightly. "I have several clients who host or attend high-profile events. Events that require both documentation and security. What I'm proposing is a partnership of sorts. You provide photography services. I ensure you're never put in a situation like you were at the gala again." Lauren frowned. "I don't understand. Are you saying you'd be my bodyguard at events?" "Not exactly." Sebastian's voice was patient. "I'm saying I can recommend you to clients who need excellent photography and who would benefit from my security services at the same events. You'd work your job, I'd work mine. And you'd have the peace of mind knowing someone is watching out for situations like what happened with that drunk guest." It sounded too good to be true, which usually meant it was. "What's the catch?" Lauren asked bluntly. "Why would you go out of your way to do this? You don't know me. We met once, for maybe 5 minutes. The catch is that the clients I work with are complicated." Sebastian chose his words carefully. "Wealthy, powerful, sometimes operating in gray areas of business and legality. Events can involve people who are dangerous in various ways. I need a photographer I can trust to be discreet, professional, and unflappable when things get tense. And you think that's me? Based on one interaction where I was literally being harassed? I think that's you based on how you handled that situation." Sebastian's voice was firm. "You didn't freeze. You didn't try to placate your aggressor or make yourself smaller to avoid confrontation. You stood your ground even knowing it could cost you professionally. That takes courage and presence of mind. Those are qualities I value." Lauren sat back, processing this. It was flattering in a weird way. Being praised for her response to harassment wasn't exactly comfortable, but she understood what Sebastian was saying. He'd watched her under pressure and seen something he respected. "What kind of events are we talking about?" she asked. "Corporate galas, private parties, charity functions. Similar to the Castellano event, but potentially with more interesting attendees." Sebastian pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "This is a contract proposal. Standard terms, but with premium rates for your services and a confidentiality clause regarding anything you might see or overhear at these events." Lauren opened the folder and nearly choked at the numbers. The proposed rate was triple what she normally charged. Triple. "This can't be real," she said. "It's very real." Sebastian's voice was matter-of-fact. "You're good at what you do, Lauren. Your compositions are excellent. You have an eye for genuine moments, and you work with professional efficiency. That's worth paying for. The premium is for the discretion and the occasional discomfort of working events that might be more stressful than average." Lauren looked at the contract, then at Sebastian. He was serious. This was a legitimate offer, not some elaborate scheme or creepy attempt to get close to her. He was offering her financial stability, interesting work, and protection at events where she'd otherwise be vulnerable. She should probably be more suspicious. Should ask more questions about who his clients were and what exactly gray areas meant. Should take the contract to a lawyer before signing anything. But she was also broke, behind on rent. One bad month away from having to give up photography and find a regular job that would slowly kill her creative soul. Can I think about it? Lauren asked. Review the contract properly, maybe have someone look it over. Of course. Sebastian's expression was approving. Take a week. If you have questions, Diana can reach me anytime. And Lauren? He paused. Regardless of whether you accept this offer, I meant what I said at the gala. Your work is excellent. You should be proud of what you create. The compliment was simple and sincere, and it made Lauren's chest feel warm in a way that was probably inadvisable given the professional context of their conversation. Thank you, she said, standing, for the opportunity, and for, the gala. Helping me. You're welcome. Sebastian stood as well, and Lauren was reminded again of how tall he was, how his presence seemed to fill the space. I hope I'll hear from you soon. Diana escorted Lauren out, providing a business card with contact information and answering a few basic questions about the types of events and the typical schedule. By the time Lauren left the building, her head was spinning with possibilities and concerns in equal measure. She spent the next 3 days researching Sebastian Moretti, trying to understand who she'd be working for if she accepted his offer. The information was sparse, a few mentions in business articles about private security consulting, a carefully maintained company website that revealed almost nothing personal, some society page photos from high-end events where he appeared in the background looking professional and detached. Nothing scandalous. Nothing that screamed danger or illegality. Just a successful private man who ran a legitimate security business and maintained very careful boundaries between his professional and personal lives. Lauren also had Allow Your Friend review the contract. Her friend's assessment. It's unusually generous, but legally sound. The confidentiality clause is broad but not unreasonable for private events. The pay rate is exceptional. If you trust the guy offering it, I'd say take it. Trust. That was the question, wasn't it? Did Lauren trust Sebastian Moretti? A man she'd met once, who'd protected her and then vanished, who'd tracked her down through means he hadn't fully explained, who was now offering her a job that could change her financial situation, but would involve entering a world she didn't fully understand. She thought about the way he'd intervened at the gala. Not aggressively, not trying to be a hero, just calmly and effectively stopping a bad situation. She thought about how he'd respected her space afterward, hadn't pushed for gratitude or contact information, had simply ensured she was okay and then left. She thought about the professionalism in his office, the straightforward nature of his offer, the way he'd acknowledged the complications without trying to minimize them. And she thought about her bank account and her overdue rent and the stack of bills on her kitchen counter. 5 days after their meeting, Lauren called Diana and accepted the position. Excellent, Diana said warmly. I'll have the signed contract sent over. Your first event is in 2 weeks, a private charity gala. Mr. Moretti will be there in his security capacity. He's looking forward to working with you. After hanging up, Lauren sat with her phone in her hand, wondering what exactly she'd just agreed to. She was about to enter a world of private events and powerful clients, with a mysterious security consultant watching over her shoulder. It was either the best decision of her career or the most reckless thing she'd ever done. Either way, there was no going back now. The first event under her new contract was everything Sebastian had warned her it would be and more. The venue was a private estate outside the city, the kind of place that had a name instead of an address. Whitmore Manor had been in the same family for 4 generations, and hosting the annual Harrington Foundation Charity Gala was apparently a tradition dating back decades. Lauren arrived 2 hours early to scout locations and test lighting, as was her practice. But this time Diana met her at the entrance with credentials, a detailed schedule, and a subtle security briefing that made Lauren realize just how different this world was from her usual events. These guests value their privacy extremely highly, Diana explained as they walked through the mansion's grand rooms. Some of them have security details, some have legal reasons for avoiding cameras. Some simply don't want their attendance documented. Mr. Moretti has provided a list of individuals who should not be photographed under any circumstances. You'll need to memorize their faces. Lauren took the tablet Diana handed her, scrolling through photos of about 15 people. And if they end up in a group shot I'm taking? Delete it, immediately, even if it's the perfect shot. Diana's voice was kind but firm. Trust me, The consequences of accidentally photographing the wrong person are worse than losing a good picture. It was a stark reminder that this wasn't a normal job. These weren't normal clients. And the premium rate she was being paid came with very specific expectations. Sebastian appeared just as guests began arriving, materializing at her elbow with such silent efficiency that Lauren actually jumped. "Sorry," he said, though he didn't sound particularly sorry. "Didn't mean to startle you. Just checking in before things get busy. Are you comfortable with everything?" "As comfortable as I can be given. I now have a list of forbidden photography subjects and a vague sense that I'm working an event for people who might be doing questionable things in their spare time." Lauren kept her voice low, aware of the growing crowd around them. Sebastian's mouth twitched with something that might have been amusement. Fair assessment. "For what it's worth, tonight's crowd is relatively tame. Wealthy and secretive, yes. Actively criminal, mostly no. You'll be fine." "Mostly no?" "There's always a few." Sebastian scanned the crowd with practiced efficiency. "But they're not your concern. I'm here to make sure nothing disrupts the event. You're here to document the parts that are meant to be documented. We both do our jobs, everyone goes home happy. And if someone tries what that guy tried at the Castellano Gala..." Sebastian's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Then they'll learn very quickly why it's a bad idea to harass anyone under my protection." The words sent an unexpected thrill down Lauren's spine. Under his protection. Like she was someone worth defending. Someone whose safety mattered to him beyond professional obligation. "Right, okay, I'm going to go take photos of rich people being charitable now." Lauren adjusted her camera, trying to refocus on work. "Lauren?" Sebastian's voice stopped her. She turned back. "You look nice. Professional but approachable. Good choice for this crowd." He was gone before she could respond, melting into the gathering crowd with that same ghost-like efficiency she'd noticed at the previous gala. Lauren stood there for a moment, processing the compliment. It had been simple, almost throwaway, but it had felt genuine. Like Sebastian had actually noticed what she was wearing and cared enough to mention it. "Focus," she told herself firmly. "You're here to work, not develop a crush on your mysterious security consultant boss." The next 4 hours were a masterclass in high-end event photography. Lauren captured stunning compositions of the mansion's architecture, candid moments of genuine connection between guests, carefully framed shots of the foundation's director making his speech. She navigated around the forbidden subjects with increasing skill, learning to anticipate where they'd be and adjusting her angles accordingly. And through it all, she was aware of Sebastian's presence. Never intrusive, never obvious, but always there. She'd catch glimpses of him in the background, watching the crowd with careful attention. Or he'd appear just as she was entering a room, having somehow cleared a path through the guests so she could get the shot she needed. Or she'd feel his eyes on her and turn to find him across the room, making sure she was okay. It was protective without being suffocating. Professional without being cold. And it made Lauren feel safer than she'd ever felt working an event. Around midnight, she was in a quieter corridor shooting detail shots of the mansion's artwork when she heard raised voices from a nearby room. Male voices, angry, the kind of argument that sounded like it might turn physical. Lauren's instinct was to move away, to avoid whatever drama was unfolding. But before she could retreat, one of the voices rose to a shout. "You don't get to walk away from this. You owe us." Something crashed. Glass breaking. More shouting. Lauren froze, suddenly very aware that she was alone in a corridor, with a potentially violent situation developing nearby. She reached for her phone to text Diana or Sebastian, but before she could, he was there. Sebastian appeared from seemingly nowhere, moving past her with focused intensity. "Stay here," he said quietly. "Don't follow me." Then he was gone, slipping into the room where the argument was happening. The shouting stopped almost immediately, replaced by Sebastian's low, controlled voice saying something Lauren couldn't make out. Silence. Then the sound of footsteps moving away. Sebastian emerged less than 2 minutes later, looking completely composed except for a slight tension around his eyes. "What happened?" Lauren asked. "Business disagreement between 2 guests who've had too much to drink. Security is escorting them both out." Sebastian's voice was matter of fact, The rest of the evening should be peaceful. How did you even know something was wrong? You weren't in this corridor. I pay attention. Sebastian moved closer, and Lauren realized he was checking her over with professional efficiency. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine. Just not used to being near situations like that. Lauren managed a shaky smile. My events usually involve drunk people making fools of themselves, not drunk people having violent arguments. Unfortunately, that's more common in this world than it should be. Sebastian's voice was gentle. Are you sure you're okay? Do you need a break? No, I'm good, really. Lauren lifted her camera. I should get back to work. These detail shots won't take themselves. Sebastian studied her face for a moment longer, then nodded. All right, but Lauren? If you ever feel uncomfortable or unsafe, you find me immediately. That's not a request. That's the deal. The deal? The reason I wanted you working these events. So I could make sure situations like what happened at the Castellano Gala never happen again. That means you trust me enough to ask for help when you need it. There was something intense in his voice, something that suggested this mattered to him beyond professional obligation. Lauren found herself nodding before she fully processed what she was agreeing to. Okay. I will. I promise. Good. Sebastian stepped back, his professional mask sliding back into place. Finish your shots. I'll be around if you need me. He disappeared again, and Lauren stood there trying to understand the protective instinct she'd just witnessed. Sebastian didn't just care about her safety as an employee or a liability. He cared about her, specifically, for reasons that went beyond the professional boundaries of their arrangement. The realization should have been concerning. Should have made her more cautious. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Cared for. The rest of the evening passed smoothly. Lauren got her shots, the event wound down gracefully, and she packed her equipment with the satisfied exhaustion that came from a job well done. Sebastian appeared as she was loading her car, carrying the last of her gear with easy strength. Good work tonight, he said, setting the equipment bag carefully in her trunk. The shots you showed me looked excellent. Thanks. It was an interesting evening. Lauren closed the trunk, then turned to face him. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why does this matter so much to you? Protecting me. I mean, you could have just offered me the job without making it personal. But you've been watching out for me specifically. Why? Sebastian was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face in the dim parking lot light. Because I know what it's like to work in a world where you're vulnerable. To be surrounded by people with power and money and a sense that rules don't apply to them. I've seen what happens to people who don't have someone watching their back. He paused. And because when I saw what was happening to you at that first gala, I recognized something. Someone who was good at their job, trying to do the right thing, but without anyone protecting them from the predators in the room. So this is about justice, about protecting the vulnerable. Partly. Sebastian's voice dropped lower. But it's also about you specifically, Lauren. I won't lie about that. There's something about you, your integrity, your courage, the way you see the world, that makes me want to make sure nothing bad happens to you. That's probably unprofessional to admit, but I'd rather be honest than let you think this is purely business. Lauren's heart hammered in her chest. Sebastian, you don't have to respond to that, he said quickly. I'm not expecting anything or asking for anything beyond the professional arrangement we already have. I just wanted you to know that you matter. To me. And I'll keep doing my job of making sure you're safe, whether you're comfortable with that or not. He started to walk away, and Lauren felt panic rise in her chest. He'd just admitted to caring about her and was now retreating before she could even process it. Wait, she called. Sebastian stopped, turning back. I thank you for telling me. And for everything. Protecting me, giving me this opportunity. Being honest about why. You're welcome. Sebastian's expression was unreadable in the shadows. Get home safe, Lauren. Text Diana when you arrive so I know you made it okay. You'll be worried if I don't? The question came out more vulnerable than Lauren intended. Yes, Sebastian said simply. I will. Then he was gone, disappearing into the night, leaving Lauren standing by her car with a racing heart, and the realization that her professional arrangement with Sebastian Moretti had just become infinitely more complicated. Over the next month, Lauren photographed 6 more events under her contract with Sebastian. Each one was similar to the first: high-end venues, complicated guest lists, the constant awareness of Sebastian's protective presence hovering somewhere in the background. And with each event, their connection deepened in ways that had nothing to do with their professional arrangement. It started with small things. Sebastian would appear with coffee during setup, having somehow memorized how she took it. He'd position himself near problem guests before they even approached Lauren, subtly redirecting them before situations could become uncomfortable. He'd catch her eye across a crowded ballroom, and something would pass between them. Acknowledgement, understanding, connection that felt intimate despite the distance. After events, they started talking. First just brief check-ins about how things went, but gradually expanding into longer conversations about the work, the clients, the strange world they were both navigating. Sebastian would walk her to her car, and they'd stand in parking lots at 2 in the morning, talking about everything and nothing. Lauren learned things about him during those conversations. That he'd been in private security for almost 15 years, having learned from his father who'd worked in the same field. That he was good at his job because he could read people, could sense danger before it materialized, could navigate complicated social dynamics with ease. That he was lonely in a way that had nothing to do with being alone and everything to do with never letting anyone truly know him. "This work requires distance," he admitted one night, leaning against her car while she packed equipment. "You can't be friends with clients, can't trust most of the people in this world, can't have relationships that might create vulnerabilities or conflicts of interest. So you end up isolated by choice, surrounded by people but connected to no one." "That sounds exhausting," Lauren said quietly. "It is." Sebastian's voice was tired. "But it's also safe. Lonely is safer than vulnerable. Or at least that's what I've told myself for years." "Do you still believe that?" Sebastian looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. "I'm not sure anymore. You're making me question a lot of things I thought were settled." Lauren's breath caught. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "I don't know yet." Sebastian pushed off from the car, creating some distance. "But it's definitely something." The tension between them became harder to ignore as the weeks passed. The way Sebastian would stand just a little too close when they were reviewing shots. The way Lauren would find excuses to seek him out at events, even when she didn't need anything. The way their goodbye conversations in parking lots stretched longer and longer, neither wanting to be the first to leave. Diana noticed, of course. She was too observant not to. "Be careful," she said to Lauren one afternoon, her voice kind but concerned. "Sebastian is a good man, but he's also complicated in ways you might not fully understand. Getting involved with him personally while working for him professionally. That's a recipe for complications." "We're not involved," Lauren protested. "We're just friendly." "You're not just friendly." Diana's voice was gentle. "You're falling for each other. Maybe you have been since that first gala. But you need to understand what you'd be getting into if this becomes more than professional. Sebastian's world is dangerous. The people he works with, the situations he navigates, they're not safe. And caring about someone in his position means accepting risks most people wouldn't choose." The warning stuck with Lauren. She knew Diana was right. There was something developing between her and Sebastian that went beyond their professional relationship. Something that felt inevitable but also potentially disastrous. She should probably create distance. Should keep things strictly business. Should protect herself from the complications Diana had warned about. But Lauren had spent her entire adult life playing it safe. Avoiding risks, maintaining boundaries, never letting anyone close enough to really know her. And where had that gotten her? Isolated, lonely, working jobs that barely paid the bills while telling herself she was being practical and responsible. Sebastian made her want to take risks. Made her want to be brave enough to care about someone even when it was complicated and potentially dangerous. Made her feel alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. The shift happened at their 8th event together, a private gala at a downtown hotel. Lauren was shooting detail photographs of the venue's elaborate floral arrangements when she overheard a conversation between 2 guests that made her blood run cold. The photographer is quite attractive, don't you think? I wonder what it would take to get her attention after the event. Everything has a price. Women who work these events understand that. They know who the real power is in the room. Lauren's hands tightened on her camera. She recognized one of the voices, a hedge fund manager she'd been warned to avoid photographing directly. Apparently his attitude toward women matched his questionable business practices. I'm going to introduce myself, the voice continued. See if she's interested in some private photography work. Lauren felt her stomach drop. She'd dealt with propositions before, but something about the predatory tone in this man's voice made her genuinely frightened. And she was alone in a secluded area of the venue with two men who clearly saw her as an object to be acquired rather than a professional doing her job. Before she could figure out how to extract herself, Sebastian appeared. He didn't come from the direction of the ballroom where the main event was happening. He came from a service corridor Lauren hadn't even noticed, moving with focused intensity that suggested he'd been tracking the two men specifically. Gentlemen, Sebastian said pleasantly, though his voice carried an edge that made both men turn. I believe the auction is about to start. You won't want to miss it. We were just admiring the hotel's decor, the hedge fund manager said, his eyes darting to Lauren and then back to Sebastian. And having a conversation about photography. I heard. Sebastian's voice remained pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Which is why I'm suggesting you return to the main event, immediately. Is there a problem? The hedge fund manager's tone turned aggressive. Last I checked, this was a public space and were guests with every right to. This is a private event on private property. Sebastian interrupted, his voice dropping to something that made Lauren's spine tingle. And you're making another guest uncomfortable. So you have two choices. Return to the ballroom or deal with security escorting you out. Your call. The two men exchanged glances, clearly trying to assess whether Sebastian was bluffing. Apparently something in his demeanor convinced them he wasn't. They left, muttering about overreaching security and understanding why certain people avoided these events. Once they were gone, Sebastian turned to Lauren, and his expression shifted from controlled authority to genuine concern. Are you all right? Yes, thank you. Again. Lauren tried to smile, but her hands were shaking slightly. I'm starting to feel like I can't work an event without needing you to rescue me. That's not on you. Sebastian moved closer, and his voice was gentle. It's on the men who think they can prey on women who are just trying to do their jobs. You're not the problem here, Lauren. They are. How did you even know I needed help? You weren't anywhere near this area. I've been tracking those two all evening. They have a reputation for harassing female staff at events. Sebastian's jaw tightened. I was making sure they didn't get near you. When they headed in this direction, I followed. Lauren stared at him, processing this. You've been following them? For hours? Just in case? Yes. That's above and beyond your job, Sebastian. This isn't about my job. Sebastian's dark eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. This is about you. About making sure you're safe. About not being able to focus on anything else at these events because I'm constantly aware of where you are and whether you're okay. Sebastian, I know this is unprofessional. I know I'm crossing lines I shouldn't cross. His voice was rough with emotion. But I can't keep pretending this is just business. I care about you, Lauren. More than I should. More than is probably wise. And I need you to know that, even if you're not ready to hear it. Lauren's heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment. The moment where she either maintained boundaries and kept things professional, or took the risk of admitting she felt the same way. I care about you too, she whispered. I have since that first night at the Castellano Gala. Maybe before, when you intervened and then vanished like something out of a story. I've tried to keep it professional. Tried to convince myself it was just gratitude or professional respect. But it's not. It's more than that. Sebastian closed the distance between them, and suddenly, they were standing so close Lauren could see the fine details of his face, the intensity in his dark eyes, the barely controlled emotion, the careful restraint that suggested he was holding himself back from something. If we do this, he said quietly, if we make this personal, it changes everything. Your job, my job, the boundaries that keep us both safe, Are you sure you want to risk that? No, Lauren admitted. I'm not sure of anything except that I'm tired of being safe. Tired of keeping everyone at a distance because distance is easier than risk. You make me want to be brave, Sebastian. Make me want to take chances I'd normally run from. You're already brave. Sebastian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone in a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. You've been brave since the moment I met you. Standing up to that drunk guest, taking this job despite not fully understanding what you were getting into, working these events even when they make you uncomfortable. You don't need me to be brave. You already are. Then what do I need you for? Sebastian smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine and transformative. Maybe you don't need me. Maybe you just want me. And that's enough. He kissed her then. And it was everything Lauren had been imagining for weeks. Gentle but intense, careful but desperate, the kiss of two people who'd been holding back for too long, and were finally letting themselves feel everything they'd been suppressing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sebastian rested his forehead against hers. This is going to be complicated, he said. I know. People will talk. Diana will have concerns. Some clients might be uncomfortable. I know that too. And my world is dangerous in ways I haven't fully explained. Getting involved with me means accepting risks. Sebastian. Lauren cut him off gently. I know. I understand. And I'm choosing this anyway. Choosing you? Whatever complications come with it. Sebastian pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully like she was something precious and fragile. Then we'll figure it out together. We'll set boundaries where we need them. Be careful about maintaining professionalism at events, and we'll deal with complications as they come. Deal, Lauren agreed. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other in a quiet corridor while an elegant party continued nearby, both accepting that they'd just crossed a line that would change everything between them. And neither of them regretted it for a second. The complications Diana had warned about arrived exactly 2 weeks later. Lauren and Sebastian had been careful. They kept their relationship private, maintained professional distance at events, never let their personal connection interfere with work. But apparently careful wasn't careful enough in a world where people paid attention to every detail and looked for leverage wherever they could find it. It started with a phone call to Diana. We have a situation, Diana said when Lauren arrived to prep for an event. One of Sebastian's clients saw you two leaving together after the Bradford Gala last week. He's using it to pressure Sebastian into taking on a contract he doesn't want. Lauren's stomach dropped. What kind of pressure? The threatening kind. Diana's voice was grim. This client wants Sebastian to provide security for some events that would require, let's say, morally questionable actions. Sebastian has been trying to exit that relationship for months, but now the client is implying that if Sebastian doesn't cooperate, information about his relationship with you might become public in ways that could damage both your reputations. That's blackmail. Yes, and it's effective because Sebastian cares more about protecting you than protecting himself. Diana met Lauren's eyes. He's considering taking the contract just to keep you out of it. Where is he? Lauren demanded. In his office. But Lauren was already moving, taking the elevator to Sebastian's floor and barging into his office without knocking. He was on the phone, his voice low and controlled, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, then ended the call. Lauren, Diana told you, you're not taking that contract. Lauren crossed to his desk, planting her hands on the polished surface. You're not compromising yourself to protect me from gossip or reputation damage. It's not just gossip. Sebastian's voice was tight. This client has connections, resources. He could make life very difficult for you professionally if he wanted to. And he will want to if I don't give him what he wants. So let him try. Lauren's voice was fierce. I'm not worth you selling your soul, Sebastian. I'm not worth you doing things you know are wrong just to keep me safe from potential consequences. You are worth it. Sebastian stood, moving around the desk. You're worth that, and more. I told you I'd protect you. Not like this. Lauren cut him off. Not by becoming someone you're not. Not by crossing lines you've spent years maintaining just because some asshole is threatening to tell people we're together. She paused. Which we are. So let him tell. Let the whole world know. I don't care about my reputation if the cost of protecting it is watching you compromise everything you believe in. Sebastian stared at her, something raw and vulnerable in his expression. You'd be willing to risk your career? Your professional reputation? Just to keep me from taking one contract? It's not one contract. It's the principle. Lauren moved closer. If you take this one, there will be another. And another. Because once people know they can leverage me against you, they'll keep doing it. We'll never be free of it unless we make it clear right now that we won't be manipulated, and if he follows through on his threats, if he damages your reputation so thoroughly you can't get work, then I'll find other work. I'll pivot. I'll figure it out. Lauren's voice was steady despite the fear underneath. But I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. That's not what love is, Sebastian. Love is protecting each other without losing yourselves in the process. Sebastian's breath caught. Love? Lauren realized what she'd said and felt heat creep up her neck, but she didn't take it back. Yes, love, because that's what this is, isn't it? We've been calling it complications and connection and risk, but it's love. And love means we make hard choices together. Not you making them for me because you think you need to protect me from consequences. Sebastian pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I love you too, he said roughly. Which is why the thought of you being hurt because of me is unbearable. Then trust me to handle it. Lauren pulled back just enough to look at him. Trust us to be strong enough to weather whatever comes. Together. They stood like that for a long moment, both processing the weight of what they'd just admitted to each other. Then Sebastian pulled out his phone and made a call. Tell your client the answer is no, he said into the phone, his voice cold and final. I won't be taking the contract. If he wants to make our relationship public, he's welcome to try. We won't be manipulated. And if he attempts any retaliation against Lauren professionally, he'll discover exactly how unpleasant I can be when someone threatens people I care about. He ended the call and looked at Lauren. There, it's done. No more compromises. No more protecting you by sacrificing my principles. We face whatever comes next together. Together, Lauren agreed. The fallout was less dramatic than expected. Sebastian's client made some noise about going public with their relationship, but Sebastian's counterthreat, whatever it was, he didn't share details, apparently convinced the man to back off. A few people in their professional circle found out about their relationship, but most didn't care beyond mild gossip. And Lauren's career didn't implode. If anything, it strengthened. Word spread that she was reliable, discreet, and had Sebastian Moretti's endorsement. More clients reached out. Better opportunities materialized. 3 months after that confrontation in Sebastian's office, Lauren was photographing a private wedding when Sebastian appeared, at her elbow with the coffee she'd been craving for the past hour. You're a lifesaver, she said, accepting the cup gratefully. I'm a security consultant who's learned to anticipate his photographer girlfriend's needs. Sebastian corrected with a small smile. Girlfriend. Lauren tested the word. I like that. Even though it makes us sound like teenagers instead of adults in our 30s with complicated professional and personal lives. We could upgrade to partners if girlfriend feels too juvenile. Partners works. Lauren grinned. Professional partners who are also romantically involved and somehow making it work despite dire predictions. From everyone who knows us, defying expectations is kind of our thing. Sebastian brushed a kiss against her temple. I have to go check the perimeter, but I'll be back before the ceremony starts. Are you good? I'm perfect, Lauren said honestly. And watching Sebastian disappear into the crowd with that same protective vigilance she'd first noticed at the Castellano Gala, Lauren realized it was true. She was perfect. Not because her life wasn't complicated or challenging, but because she'd found someone who matched her complications with his own. Someone who protected without smothering, who challenged without demanding, who loved without trying to change her. They'd started with a moment of crisis, Lauren trapped by an aggressive guest, Sebastian intervening without expectation of reward. They'd developed through professional collaboration and late-night parking lot conversations. They deepened through honesty about fears and vulnerabilities neither usually shared. And they'd become something real when both chose risk over safety, connection over isolation, love over the comfortable distance they'd each maintained for years. It was messy and complicated and sometimes difficult to navigate the intersection of their professional and personal lives. But it was also real and deep and worth every complication that came with it. Lauren lifted her camera and captured a shot of the wedding venue. Elegant, beautiful, full of promise. Then she tucked the camera away and took a moment to simply exist in the satisfaction of a life that had become infinitely richer, since a mysterious man in a midnight blue suit had stepped in to protect her at a gala months ago. Sometimes the best relationships started with someone seeing you at your most vulnerable and choosing to help anyway. Sometimes love began with a stranger who vanished before you could thank them, only to reappear with opportunities and protection and eventually everything you didn't know you needed. And sometimes, the most dangerous decision you could make was the one that led to the safest place you'd ever known, in the arms of someone who saw all your vulnerabilities and protected them while still believing you were strong enough to protect yourself.